Okay, everybody, happy Earth Day. Boy, what a beautiful day it is here in Virginia. I was wearing a jacket a little earlier. It was pretty chilly last night.
Okay, everybody, happy Earth
Whoops, I
Day.
need to
Boy,
mute
what a beautiful
myself
day it
here.
is
Hang
here in
on a second.
Virginia. I was
I don't
wearing a
need to hear me. There we go. We've got a new format. We're streaming this live, and gosh, what a surprise this has been. We've got people from all over the country joining us, and we're trying out a new live streaming capability because none of us are at the center. I'm on my deck at my house. You can see the woods behind me, and it's a gorgeous day, little on the cool side. So I was kind of sweating it out to see if I could make it without a jacket. And the temperatures finally creeped into the 40s or 50s. But 50th anniversary of Earth Day. What a surprise. I mean, the thing that always makes me feel old is when I remember the first one. And indeed, I do. I remember the first Earth Day back in 1970. I was a freshman at Bridgewater College back in the last century. And at 18 years old, Earth Day and the future and saving the world were all pretty abstract thoughts. I was uh, doing freshman things, and Lord knows what that may have been. And some organization on campus, and I honestly don't even remember which one it was, handed out uh, information sheets saying, "This is what you can do for the earth." And as I mentioned on my Facebook page this morning, the one thing that I remember from that, and truly it is only one thing from that entire multiple sheets of mimeographed paper, was don't buy colored toilet paper. Now, that's easy to do today since you can't buy toilet paper of any color. But truly, in the last 50 years, it made sense to me not to buy colored paper that would put dyes and pollutants in the water. And so I have been a white paper towel and white toilet paper guy for the last 50 years. And that is my main memory of the first Earth Day. But since then, I've got a lot of other things that have and it really imprinted Earth Day on my heart, on my mind. I've been very fortunate to have been a part of a lot of different celebrations, and it really is exciting to look back and think that it's been half a century. I mean, it's exciting to think how much has been done, what kind of a message and an impact Earth Day has had. Might not be quite as exciting to think that I've been there doing them for a half a century, but it is what it is. Back in 1970, it was the first Earth Day started by Wisconsin Senator Gaylord Nelson, who was a very, very strong environmental advocate. Gaylord was a great guy, little short guy, but boy, I'm telling you, when he walked into the room, the oxygen in the room was his. And he had an aide, a fellow by the name of Dennis Hayes. And Dennis is the one who organized the first Earth Day. And back in the 70s, we were all aspiring hippies or pretending to be hippies or whatever. And some of the lingo at the time really stuck. And it was Earth Day was to be a happening. And a happening it was. As Lauren explained earlier, there were really observances all over the country back then, and today it's all over the world. And I did not know until I watched Lauren's presentation a little earlier that Earth Day is the largest secular observance on Earth, and that's pretty impressive. We've got a lot to do there. So thank you for being with us today. We're trying out today this new format being produced by Kayla Klein, who is our office administrator, goddess of graphics, and doer of all things miraculous. And so she gets the credit for anything that's working here today. I think Lauren and I both made the same mistake running two computers, or at least two screens on a computer, where one was the voice track coming over the live feed, which you're listening to, and the other was our input track, our Zoom track. And so it was going around and around. And so anyway, here we are. It seems to be working. And thanks for being here. Now, we're going to take questions. We're going to take comments. If I look down here, it's not because I'm not paying attention. It's because I'm trying to literally pay attention to what you're saying on the moderated chat as we go along. But I was asked to share some memories of Earth Day. And indeed, I mentioned 1970, and that was really before I had chosen my career. When I graduated from college in 1973, my mantra all the way through college, when people say, "Hey, boy, what are you going to do when you grow up?" is I'm going to go to law school. And indeed, that was my chosen career path, though honestly, without an awful lot of thought put into that. And then lo and behold, when I got out of college and actually got accepted to law school, it dawned on me I didn't want to go. So I thought, well, I'll sit out for one more year and I'll go next year. So I got accepted again the next year and still didn't want to go. And so it's worked out okay, though. I actually found a job that I like, and I've been with it for quite a while. But back in 1980, which was the 10th anniversary of Earth Day, the Wildlife Center didn't yet exist. Back in 1980, I was the executive director of an organization called the Conservation Council of Virginia Foundation. Big mouthful. Today, that organization still exists. I was the first executive director, but today it is known as the Virginia Conservation Network, or VCN for short. And it's still doing the same things we started doing back in 1979 when I joined that organization, which is public education, networking conservation groups, and advocating for conservation and the environment with our state legislature and other policymakers. So that's where my career started. And in 1980, because I was the director of a state environmental coalition, I got invited to go to Washington, D.C. for a big Earth Day celebration for conservation leaders. And that was great. I tried very hard to participate in as many of those things as possible. And back then, we were advocating for wilderness designation in Virginia. And it was then that we were also pushing very, very hard, especially in 1980, for what was then known as the Alaska Public Interest Lands Act. The state of Alaska was mostly federal land, but the federal land was just sort of all there in one big glob. It was federal land. And we needed to have it designated as parks and refuges and various other agency designations so that it could be managed by those respective agencies. And I was the Virginia coordinator of the Alaska Coalition. So armed with all of my new grassroots vim and vigor at a tender young age, off to Washington, D.C., I went to this celebration, and I managed to get there early. Well, the fellow who was also there early that I recognized right away was a guy by the name of Eddie Albert. And you may not recognize the name. You might. It may sound familiar. But if you saw the Volunteer Appreciation Week video that was on the Wildlife Center's website, at least I think it's up there, you saw my colleague and dear friend Randy Hewitt doing an admirable impression of Eddie Albert from Green Acres. Eddie Albert, of course, was the actor who, with one of the Gabor sisters, and we couldn't quite figure out which one. We think it was Ava, but he portrayed the city guy that came out, bought a farm with his high maintenance city wife, and the series was a great success and just hysterical for a long time. Well, it turns out that Eddie Albert was indeed an advocate for small farmers and for rural lifestyles and protecting rural communities. So that's why he was there. And we struck up quite a friendship. We both got there almost an hour early for the big reception and party and celebration on the Potomac River. So I had the opportunity to really sit down with him, get to know him, get to spend time with him, learn about his issues. What a great guy. And that was just 10 years into Earth Day. And that was the start of a lot of things for me, because shortly thereafter, we founded the Wildlife Center of Virginia in 1982. It's been almost 38 years that the Wildlife Center has been in existence. And for each of those 38 years, we've been making our mark and significantly increasing our footprint on the planet. And at least in our case, we hope that it's a positive impact and a beneficial footprint. But in 1990, which was the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, the Wildlife Center was well established by then and increasingly well known, and especially in the mid-Atlantic states. At that time, I had a bald eagle named Hotwire in the early days, because he had lost part of his wing by sitting on the crossbar of an electric pole, and he touched both wires, causing an electric arc that burned off, quite honestly, his wing from the wrist out. So Hotwire at the time was pretty famous in this part of the country because back then the bald eagle was still a critically endangered species, only beginning to recover from the DDT impacts. Populations were coming back. And because I had one who could go and talk to legislators, let's say, we were pretty well known. Having a bald eagle in Washington, D.C. at that time was like having a pass key to Congress, because there wasn't a congressman up there that wouldn't slap his granny to get his picture taken with a bald eagle in front of the American flag. And having the only bald eagle in town was quite an advantage. And it really did get us in a lot of places and really afforded me the opportunity to meet a lot of wonderful people over the years and share with them our perspective on a lot of things. But back in 1990, I was invited to come and participate in the National Earth Day celebration, the 20th anniversary celebration on the Mall in Washington, D.C. And I was invited to participate in the opening ceremonies, which were being held on Friday afternoon of Earth Day weekend. And that Friday afternoon, the ceremonies were presided over by the Native American communities from across the United States. They had come in force to bless the event, to say prayers for the earth, and to get the whole weekend off to a good start. And there were about 500,000 people that showed up in Washington, D.C. that weekend. And the Wildlife Center of Virginia was set up with an exhibit hosted by EPA. We were on the grounds of the Washington Monument. But the opening ceremony was held, if you've been to DC and you know the mall and the Smithsonian Institution, the opening ceremonies were held at what is known as the Castle, which is the original building of the Smithsonian Institution. And as I say, it was very colorful, very festive. Native Americans and regalia from all over the United States were there. But there was a fellow there I had met a little earlier, a fellow by the name of Austin Two Moons. And I've got a picture that I'm going to try to share with you here. And this picture is of Austin Two Moons and me on the grounds of the Washington Monument. And if the guy looks familiar, well, the guy with the brown hair holding the eagle, I hope he looks familiar. But that was me back when I had brown hair before I matured and got my white head like a bald eagle. But the fellow with me is Austin Two Moons, who was an elder with the Northern Cheyenne. And Austin is indeed, or at least was, I haven't seen him in many years. I don't even know if he's still alive. But Austin was the grandson of the chief of the Northern Cheyenne, the Indian on the Indian Head Nickel. And spending time with him was pretty amazing and really enlightening. And indeed, the golden eagle that is on my arm there is Junior, who was my partner for 28 years before he finally died, or 27 years, 27 years before he finally died. And we really had a lot of adventures, but Austin was a member of the Eagle clan, and it was uncanny the way that Junior, the golden eagle, was behaving around him. We had done a program earlier for the Miss Native American pageant, and that was at the Kennedy Center. So that's where I had first met him. And Austin was an artist with the Native American flute. And so he played a prayer, a flute prayer for the eagle on the stage of the Kennedy Center. And I honestly, I get choked up thinking about it, because the bird responded to that in a way that I never would have imagined. It was just otherworldly. It was just spiritual. And so that is just one of the Earth Day memories that sticks with me. Now, that weekend in DC was eventful for some other things. We were there Friday afternoon to open the events, and we were there all day Saturday, which was the main Earth Day celebration. But all of the exhibits were up all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And as I say, there were 500,000 people that showed up on the National Mall for that celebration. Well, on Sunday afternoon, it was supposed to close at about 5 o'clock. And bear in mind that at this time of the year, the end of April, it can either be chilly, like it was here in Virginia this morning. We actually have a freeze warning out again tonight, or it can be blazing hot. And of course, that day it chose to be blazing hot. And the golden eagle was trained not only to sit on my arm, but to sit on a perch that I brought along with me in front of the crowd. And we were doing programs, sort of a rolling program. People would just come and go, and we just kept talking, and that worked out okay. And it got closer to 4 o'clock, 4:30. It was hot. We were all thirsty. We were all tired after 2 full days of this. So Junior the golden eagle jumps down off of his perch to get a drink of water. Well, when he jumped back up on his perch, he was, of course, on a leash attached to the cuffs on his leg. The leash went up over his shoulder, and which was no big deal, happens all the time in his confinement. I just reached over to take the leash off of his shoulder. Well, that didn't suit him all that well. And what he did was, with his left foot, he reached out and grabbed my right arm and put a talon in right here and another one in right here. I don't know if you can see the scar, but the talons went all the way through my arm and came out the other side in front of about 150 people who were standing there wondering if this was really part of the show, part of the program. I assured them that it wasn't. I was not screaming and yelling, because that would have just upset the bird. But there were little flakes of enamel flying off my teeth. So as I'm trying to bear in mind, I'm also holding a bald eagle on my left arm. So fortunately, someone was there with me who took the bald eagle, put him back in his cage, and then I began the negotiation with Junior the golden eagle to get him to release my arm. And that was a protracted negotiation, let's say. And I came out on the losing end of that discussion, but he finally turned me loose, and the programs were finally over, and the people went away, and we loaded up the animals, and I went to the van in which we were traveling that day to look for the first aid kit. Well, unfortunately, it had been removed from the van and wasn't there. And I needed to clean up what I knew would soon become an infected wound, which was a body piercing before it was cool. But we ended up figuring out that hey, policemen all carry first aid kits. I'll go ask a policeman if I can borrow his. So I walked over to what looked like a friendly police officer there in Washington, D.C., asked for his first aid kit. He said, well, how'd you get hurt? What's wrong? And I said, well, I have a puncture wound in my wrist, and I just need some disinfectant to clean it up. And he said, well, puncture wound, did somebody stab you? What happened? I said, no, I wasn't stabbed. And I said, it's minor. I just need a little antiseptic. And he says, well, I'm not giving it to you till you tell me what happened. So, well, if you must know, an eagle grabbed me with his foot and drove his talons through my arm. Well, he had me up against the car so quickly that I didn't know what had hit me. Sir, what kind of drugs have you been taking? And fortunately, another police officer who had seen the whole thing happen came running over. Charlie, Charlie, I know what he must have just told you. He's not on drugs. He really got grabbed by an eagle. So it was one of those memories that just sticks with you. Well, then they wanted to put me in an ambulance and send me to the hospital when what I really wanted was alcohol and a Band-Aid. But in any case, it was one of those days. But that's my 20th anniversary memory. So let's see. Have we? Yeah, I see a couple of comments here. Junior was an awesome bird. He was an awesome bird. A incredible, incredible creature, and it was a privilege to have him for so many decades. And there are some fun comments here that my reference to hippies. Are there any photos? Yes, but not without significant contributions to pry them loose. I used to wear a beard for years and years. And when I got out of college, I was teaching school and I asked my students, how old do you think I am? The youngest guess my students made was 10 years older than I actually was. And that was the night I went home and shaved off my beard. My chin was cold for a month. But anyway, that's another story. We're not here to talk about beards and chins and that sort of thing. So let's see. Oh, shoot. Should have left that for Ed. Okay, there's a question there. Never mind. Talon injury. Yep, it was a talon injury. And not my last, not my first, but certainly the most significant and the one with the largest audience. But in any case, we're here today celebrating Earth Day. Of course, the Wildlife Center is under the same pandemic restrictions that everybody else is. We are learning about new technology because we're having to use that technology to get our work done. And we've been talking, we're having actually more leadership meetings. Our department managers and our officers are spending more time talking with each other in an organized format through Zoom meetings. The technology, I think, that is bringing me to you today. We've actually been able to spend more time together than we normally would at the office, simply because we're all stranded and isolated and we don't have some of the same distractions that we do at the office. And we can schedule these meetings. And I will have to tell you that we've got some exciting things we're discussing. We're in the process of a strategic planning cycle. And I think folks that are with us today that enjoy this type of interaction are going to be just thrilled with some of the things that are coming up. So there we go. All right. Now, so let me see. I've got a few notes here. One of the things that Amanda reminded me is to remind you that even though we've been ordered to work from home and people who are not absolutely essential in the Wildlife Center are honestly just not allowed in the building. And I'm probably the least essential person on the entire staff. So I've been working from home or from my cabin or from various other places. But as long as we've got a computer, we're at work. And when I'm at the office, typically I'm standing in front of this very same computer. So it really hasn't interfered with us quite as much. But the one thing that we have noticed is that this year, our patient load is on track for another all-time record. We have really wondered what the pandemic, the stay-at-home order would do for our patient load. Would people not be finding animals because they're supposed to be staying home, or would they uh, be out in their yards and hiking in the woods and spending more time outdoors because they've got time to spend outdoors? Turns out the latter has been the case, and we are well ahead of last year's patient intake numbers, and last year was an all-time record and a significant record at that. So we're quite confident that 2020 is going to be another record year. I think you've heard already today, we took in a couple more bear cubs yesterday. We're getting back up toward our all-time high in bear cubs, and the season is just beginning. because a lot of these mother bears are just now emerging from the den. They typically don't come out until April, and they sort of come and go as they first go out. And with these very, very cold nights that we've had, it would not be unexpected for them to either stay in the den or go back to the den during the day with their very, very young cubs. But we got in two from Southside Virginia yesterday. The mother had apparently been killed by a car, and the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries brought them into us. And the cubs are healthy. They're doing well, as I understand. I have not seen them. I'm not one of the people that's allowed to see them. I watch them on the camera the same way that all of you do. And our bear mamas and our experts are really giving them the best care they can get. And you'll be hearing soon, if you haven't already, that some of the bears that we have from last year will be returning to the wild very, very soon. And so that's all exciting news. So we're ready to get it done. And honestly, with this continued strain on our resources, more animals coming in than ever before. We're down to 2 veterinarians. We had 4, and I think you're all aware. And if you're not, I'll make you aware that Dr. Peach, who has been with us for 4 years, our dearly beloved Dr. Peach, has accepted a new job with the Game and Fish Department in the state of Wyoming. She'll be the head veterinarian at their Wildlife Health Laboratory in Wheatland, Wyoming. And we are very proud of her, very, very proud of her. And we wish her all the best in her new career. I've got a lot of friends in Wyoming, wildlife conservation friends, and I am quite confident they are going to be the beneficiaries of her expertise and her experience from the Wildlife Center of Virginia. Dr. Claire, who had been with us for about 9 months, had to leave us because of the pandemic. Due to a pre-existing medical condition, she was not able to continue to come into the center and work. So, pardon me. I'm not sure which mute button to push, so I just have to turn my head, but take a shot of coffee here. I have behind me lots of woods, but what you don't see is on the other side of the deck are my huge pine trees. And this time of April, we have the Pine Pollen Festival in Virginia. So everything is yellow. And if you're sitting outside for too long, you end up inhaling pine pollen. And if you're the least bit sensitive to it, you've got a sneeze or a cough coming, but it is soluble in coffee. So anyhow, that's where we are. Let me see if we got any questions here. I'm looking to see the stay outdoors, stay at home orders in Pennsylvania. Animals are benefiting and not as many getting hit by cars. I'm seeing this from our pal Deb in PA. Hi, Deb. And that's true. We're seeing a lot fewer cars on the road, though not as many fewer as we'd like to see. And that has had a benefit for some wildlife. People are still letting their cats outdoors. That's a shame. And we're getting lots and lots of baby animals. Baby birds have started to come in, and they are very, very labor intensive. And so please keep your cats indoors. And if you take them outdoors, go with them and see to it they don't get into any trouble. But staying at home for the cat, those are orders that should go throughout the year and not just during a pandemic. So let's see here. Work on stories. Let's see what else I've got here. Ed Who. Yeah, we don't know about that Ed Who guy. He hasn't been around as much, but here I am. I'm back. And hopefully I'll be spending more time with you all in the days and weeks ahead, because that's one of my pandemic goals, at least, if not a goal for the year. We have stayed very, very busy, both coping with the pandemic, working on some international conservation issues caused by the pandemic. One of the things that has popped up is the fact that this virus, the COVID-19 or the SARS CoV 19 is considered, or SARS-CoV-2, which is a severe respiratory syndrome, the second version of it. It's suspected of being from natural causes, which indeed are causes thought to have originated with wildlife, and it is thought to be or to originally have been, let's say, a zoonotic disease, and a disease that is likely to have made the jump or the spillover from wild species to domestic species, and from domestic species to humans, and what they call wet markets, which are all over Asia, but especially in China and Southeast Asia, where meat is sold, live animals are kept, live wildlife is sold for food, for pets, for medicinal use, just all sorts of things. And it's like a walk-in germ culture. It's really an environment that is high potential for big problems. And this COVID-19 is just one example that has come from that. We've had other examples in recent years. The SARS virus, which was severe acute respiratory syndrome, that was also attributed to the jump between animals and people. The avian influenza was also a zoonotic disease, the H5N1 virus that we worried about a few years ago. That did not turn into the pandemic that we'd been warned to expect. This one did. And so it's one of those things that if people are warned and they get used to the warnings and get used to ignoring the warnings, or get used to the warnings not coming true, we end up where we are right now. Now, because the Wildlife Center is a teaching hospital, one of the things we've spent time doing is preparing training materials, educational videos for our colleagues in the wildlife care community, not just in Virginia, but nationwide and indeed worldwide. And we prepared 2 training videos, one of which was just basic stuff. What are we doing at the Wildlife Center of Virginia to protect ourselves, to keep our environment, our surfaces sanitized, to keep our people separate, and to protect ourselves from exposure from each other, from the public, and from materials or substances brought into the building. And because we are a veterinary hospital, because we are very actively involved in disease surveillance, these things come naturally to us. So sanitation is a big deal for the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and has been long before this current pandemic was such an outbreak. But it also was something that we know how to handle. And so we're feeling very good about the response we've had, and quite literally, staff that don't need to be in the building are not allowed in the building, and only our medical staff is there. And we've even divided our medical and animal care staff into 2 teams, the gray team and the blue team. And that has nothing to do with the Civil War. It was, I think, originally conceived by Dr. Kara. She's from Canada and would know about such things. But in any case, the 2 teams work independently. They're not there at the same time. There is no overlap between the teams, so there's no opportunity for exposure from person-to-person contact. One of the other videos we prepared was also in response to one of the strategies that has come up, originally suggested by our friend Sabrina Garvin, who is the director of the Southwest Virginia Wildlife Center in Roanoke, Virginia, which is a smaller but very high quality facility. And she called me one day and said, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could send healthy orphaned animals home with our staff, or especially with some of our volunteers who are skilled and competent in caring for them, so that we can get them out of the hospital. Because one thing that's true of almost every wildlife care facility I've ever seen is the nursery, the room in which baby animals are kept, is typically jam-packed full of baby animals, because they live in aquaria or Tupperware containers and can be kept in a lot of animals in a small space, and people are working literally elbow to elbow feeding them. So I approached our department director at the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, our new director, been on the job less than a year now, Ryan Brown, who I'm pleased to say has been a friend for a long time and somebody of whom I think the world. And he responded within 48 hours with an executive order granting us permission. And when I say us, I mean the registered wildlife hospitals, and there are 3 here in Virginia, granting us the permission to send healthy animals home with our volunteers, with our staff, with our students, so they don't need to be cared for in the hospital setting, because it's honestly not medically necessary. They just need good food, good environment, proper environment for heat and warmth and cleanliness, and the right kind of nurture. And that can be provided anywhere by a competent individual. So we've gotten at least 50, and probably more by now, animals out of the Wildlife Center into the hands of our at-home team. And those animals are being cared for away from the building. And that's greatly reduced the pressure on our staff, on our students, and it probably is getting these animals the same quality care they would have gotten at the Wildlife Center, but on a far more personalized basis. And so we really appreciate Director Brown doing that for us. And the same day that we got word that he had issued the emergency executive order with that authority for Virginia's wildlife rehabilitators, I approached the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it took them about 2 weeks, not 2 days, but they eventually came back with language authorizing federally permitted rehabilitators of migratory birds to do the same thing, to have this same authority if they request it. So these are emergency measures, they're emergency procedures that are making a real difference. And we're seeing that difference on a daily basis. And we're really, really pleased about that. Now, one of the things that has had us concerned for a while, and hopefully those of you watching today are helping us reduce our anxiety about this, is even though we are not in the office working, our work continues. Our care of animals, the price has gone up because we've got more animals than ever before. We're having to feed more bears than ever before. And for those of you that participated in our special fundraiser recently, that was to raise money for bear formula. And I think Kelsey, our head bear mama, told me that it was something like $175 a bucket for bear formula, and they go through a bucket in just a couple of days. And so it's an expensive proposition feeding a bear. And especially this past winter when the weather was so warm and the darn bears wouldn't hibernate, they were standing at the fence with their little tin cups, raking it back and forth on the fence, demanding to be fed. And the groceries for those bears was a commanding need, and it really ruined our grocery budget. I'll put it that way. And we are so blessed to have so many grocery stores out there that are saving for us the vegetables and the fruits that are scratched or dented or bruised or whatever, which means that they can't sell it. But I can assure you, it makes no difference whatsoever to a bear. And our bears honestly eat a lot better than I do, but they're bears. But one of the things we're still wondering about is not knowing how long this is going to go on, and not knowing how long it will be before the economy recovers. We're anxious to know what it's going to do to our contributions for the year. And that's a real concern for us, because, as I say, just because we're not in the office doesn't mean that our expenses have gone down. They haven't. On the contrary, they've gone up. And we're getting a lot done. We're doing a lot more here online. This event today, our virtual Earth Day, is evidence of the fact that we are trying to be responsive to this situation and trying to be proactive in this situation to bring our message, fulfill our mission of teaching the world to care about and care for wildlife and the environment, and do that online, where we stay separate, we stay safe, and we stay sanitized. In case you're wondering, I have sanitized my computer screen. So if you need to touch yours, don't worry, there are no germs there. So that is a help. But we hope and we believe, we trust that our supporters, and there are many very generous people who keep us in business. We hope they will stay with us in these times of uncertainty, because the one thing is clear, and that is that our services are essential, because it's not a matter of putting off the emergency care of injured and orphaned wildlife until it's convenient or safer or less anxiety ridden to do so. We have to be there. And so a special salute to our veterinary and rehabilitation teams, and especially to our folks at the front desk who are admitting the new patients, are answering the flood of phone calls that are coming in, and keeping the Wildlife Center in business and doing the things that we do on a daily basis, and the things that you all are so generous in supporting. So one more sip of coffee to get this last piece of pollen out of my throat. Hopefully that worked. And, I also would be remiss, and I know I'll be reminded as soon as I get off the air here, so to speak, if I did not remind you of our favorite saying, where there's a will, we want to be in it. And I will have to say that in the last number of years, people who have included the Wildlife Center in their testamentary gifts, in their estate planning, in their look to the future, their plan for allowing their legacy to outlive them, their love of wildlife to live on after they are gone. It has been folks who have made such generous bequests to the Wildlife Center that gives us the confidence, and indeed, frankly, the reserves that will enable us to go forward through this difficult time, through this difficult economy, without needing to worry about what we're not going to do, or what we're not going to be able to afford to do, or which members of our staff will have to leave because we can't cover payroll. We really have appreciated so much those individuals who have remembered us, or actually we remember them now. They thought of us when they were doing their planning, and now not only do we remember them, we honor them by continuing to operate full steam, 100%. We haven't cut back anything except our off-site programming and our training of certain students who can't get here safely because of the pandemic, but the care of animals continuing uninterrupted, and at the full state-of-the-art level that we always provide. Our outreach to the public, if anything, has gone up because we are doing everything now online. We can reach you more effectively, more efficiently through the online formats. And our mission is moving forward, even in this difficult time of pandemic and work at home restrictions and everything that we're all struggling with. Now, that's not to say that we're not truly struggling with it, and just keeping your sanity in this time is a challenge, and especially for those of us who are pathological extroverts and really thrive on human interaction, to be sitting at home and interacting with people only on the computer screen is pretty challenging, and it's hard to keep your energy up and keep your focus going, but we're doing it. And the wonderful thing about it is the virtual Earth Day, as Lauren, my colleague, mentioned this morning. This was her idea. She said, hey, let's do this since we can't do a real on-site Earth Day. Let's do an Earth Day anyway. And so she gets full credit for coming up with this. A lot of us are participating, but the original concept was hers, and we appreciate it. So a hats off to her. So, all right, let me see. I mean, I'm going to look down here for a second and see what's here and check my time, be sure we're doing okay. One of the comments I see here is thanking me for the reminder of our gala that is coming up in November. Now, by the most conservative of estimates, we should be back to, if not normal, at least approaching normal by November. And we're counting on that. The first Saturday night in November is the date of our annual gala and fundraising auctions for the Wildlife Center. I believe this is 35 years this year. I think I'm right on that. And it's a lovely event held in Stanton, Virginia at the beautiful historic Stonewall Jackson Hotel. We've been there for a long time, and it's a fancy affair, a dress up black tie affair. And we have incredible live auction items and silent auction items, delicious dinner, and lots of interaction between our guests, our staff, and our ambassador animals. It's just a wonderful opportunity. And one of the things that we do whenever possible to do it is when seating is being assigned, we put a member of the Wildlife Center staff at every single table so that all of our guests get to spend some time getting to know our incredible team of professionals, learning firsthand about various aspects of what we do, the experience of our staff members. And invariably, people tell me that they learn so much. It's so entertaining. It's so fascinating to hear from somebody who spends her day feeding black bears, somebody else who spends her day educating children about wildlife, somebody else who fields thousands of phone calls in a year's time and deals with some pretty bizarre questions from the public and is a problem solver. So we're trying very, very hard to let our supporters know that you're part of the team. And, a lot of organizations say that, but we really mean it. When you make a contribution to the Wildlife Center, we never consider it to have become our money. It's still your money. You've entrusted it to us to do something worthwhile, to pursue the mission of the organization, and we're going to take that trust very seriously, use your money wisely and efficiently and effectively, and advance our mission. And then we're going to tell you what we've done. And after that, we may ask you to support us some more, but you knew that was coming. But the Wildlife Center is very fortunate. We have worked hard to earn a 4-star rating from the online Charity Navigator, which is a watchdog organization. It itself, Charity Navigator, is a nonprofit, but its mission is to evaluate other nonprofits and be able to give an informed ruling and an informed opinion about how effectively, efficiently, and honestly they use the contributions sent in. They rate organizations from no stars to 4 stars. And I'm pleased to say the Wildlife Center, I think we are in year 6 of a 4-star rating. And that was the last 6 years was when our budget broke $1 million. And you have to be over $1 million a year in order to be rated by them. They're just frankly too many nonprofits out there, all of whom have their hand out, but not all of whom deserve your support. So that's where we are. So pardon me. Pollen, love it. Just hate eating it. So in any case, let me see. We have a number of questions coming in, waiting for Ed. So hopefully he'll have time to get to them. Thanks for your patience, says Amanda. So I'm not sure where to find these questions. So Kayla, can I call on you to give me the questions?
Yes. All right. Let me see.
Okay.
We have one from Larry.
Kayla, our able producer, is going to do that, and I'm not hearing her. So.
Oh, you can't hear me?
We'll see how that goes. All right.
You probably have to unmute your audio.
Okay, let's see. That actually, I'm not hearing her because I have her muted. So that won't work. So hang on a second. Let me go here. unmute her.
Okay,
There we
let's
go.
see. That actually, I'm not hearing her because I have her muted.
Well, you might hear me twice, but we do have a question from Larry that says, what is your favorite thing about working at the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and what has kept you there for so many years?
Well, it sure beats a real job. And I have worked at the Wildlife Center for 38 years. And I was the co-founder, one of four people that started the organization back in the fall of 1982. And conservation had been a passion. I'd been in the conservation movement for a number of years, and it gave me an opportunity to focus my energies. And I've always been interested in public service and always been interested in making a difference. When I was 9 years old, I was on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. when John F. Kennedy was inaugurated. And as a 9-year-old kid, I was pretty impressionable. And when he made the statement, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country, I thought he was talking to me. And I've honestly tried to live by that since then. I'm not sure my country always appreciates what I've done, but I certainly try, and it's not for lack of motivation. But without a doubt, the thing about the Wildlife Center that makes it an incredible place to work is the people, not the building, not the animals, not the work that we do. It's the people doing the work. We have an incredible team. Close to 25 employees right now. And each and every one of those people brings something special, brings a passion, a dedication, skill sets that are just off the charts. And they let me hang around only because I have tenure. And I'm not sure, honestly, I could get a job there today if I had to apply, but I'm clinging to it vigorously. People often ask me when I'm going to retire, and my response is, why would I do that? I will eventually, and not sure when. No announcements and no rumors need start. But the truth is, when I work around the staff of the Wildlife Center of Virginia, after a day of working with them, I come home with more energy than when I went in. And they're inspiring. They're a wonderful group of people. That's the answer to that question. So I got another one for me, Kayla.
Oh, yeah. We got one from Kate Harrell in Chattanooga. And Kate asks, what have been some of the biggest challenges when you were getting the center established?
Gosh, the biggest challenges in getting the center established was really creating a profession that didn't really exist. Because when we started the Wildlife Center of Virginia, it started off in 1982 in a horse barn. That we shared with horses, actually. It was a 10-stall barn. We took 5 of the stalls and closed them off with chicken wire, which honestly makes me have chills now that I think about it. It's such an inappropriate way to confine wildlife, but we didn't know any better. There was no one from whom to learn. We had a veterinarian, 2 veterinary technicians, and my background was in conservation organization management, public education, and advocacy. So we had what we needed to do a good job, but we didn't really know what that job was, and other people didn't know what that job was. So we literally had to set out to teach the world what we were trying to do, and why it mattered. And we were pretty successful with that. Obviously, the first year, our annual budget in 1983, which was our first full calendar year, was $14,000. And we had no idea how we could raise that much money. That was more money than any of us had ever seen in one pile. And now we go through that in about 2.5 days. So getting it started was a matter of putting down roots, building a foundation. But in the first, probably, I'll say the first 15 years, we grew at a rate of nearly 25% per year, both in terms of patient numbers, in terms of our education outreach, and in terms of our budget. But we have always been very, very conservative financially. So while we've had a few very lean years financially, we've never bounced a check, and I'm real proud of that. What's next, Kayla?
All right, we got one from Angel Kitty, who asks, how many WCV patients are at home with volunteers right now?
Okay, right now, I would have to go back and check. I asked for this number last week. So I don't know how many have gone home since last week, but there were 50 small mammals, mostly opossums, squirrels, and rabbits, which are very high maintenance animals, the rabbits in particular. And they were home with volunteers, and that literally saves us an incredible amount of staff time and therefore saves us money because we're not paying people to feed the animals. We're buying the food. We are providing that to the volunteers that are providing at-home care. But if they stayed at the center, we'd have to buy the food anyway. So if somebody else will take that food and put it in the animal, it's a pretty good deal from my perspective. But at least 50 animals now, and baby birds are just starting to come in, and they will be the ones that will be really important to get out of the center. What's next?
I also saw an earlier question from Angel Kitty that I would like to know the answer to, which is, how did Junior come to the Wildlife Center?
How did Junior come to the Wildlife Center? Well, that actually is a good story. Back in 1982, it was the 200th anniversary of the bald eagle being designated as the symbol of the United States. And the bald eagle, of course, now is ubiquitous on the top of every flagpole and in half of the logos, it seems, from everything from sports teams to beer to whatever. But the bald eagle is being celebrated in 1982 as our national symbol, the 200th anniversary. And it, at that time, was still critically endangered. The Endangered Species Act had been passed, had been out there for 10 years. The Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act was in place, and we were starting to see the bald eagle population stabilize, not even increase, but just stop decreasing, which was a great sign. DDT, the chemical that was primarily responsible for the loss of the bald eagle, had been banned in 1972, I believe it was, but it took 10 years for it to get out of the environment. So by the early 80s, the bald eagle population was showing signs that we might just be able to pull it back from the brink of extinction. A friend of mine, a guy by the name of Roy Geiger, who is a park manager in Northern Virginia at one of the county parks in Arlington County, Roy at the time was the chief naturalist for the National Wildlife Federation, and he had a bald eagle that he had gotten to do a traveling educational program. That bird's name was Magisawa, and had one badly damaged wing, but Roy traveled all over the country with that bird, doing presentations, and in December of 1982, which was just about 6 weeks after we had formally incorporated the Wildlife Center, I had the opportunity to meet Roy and attend a program he did in Harrisonburg, Virginia for the Rockingham Bird Club, Rockingham County being the county in which the city of Harrisonburg is located. And I got a chance to meet him, see the bird, and I was in love. That was the first eagle on which I'd ever laid eyes, and I started shortly thereafter trying to learn about handling raptors. And in 1985, I decided that I would get a bald eagle for the Wildlife Center and started looking for one. I was contacted by the San Diego Zoo, or the San Diego Wild Animal Park, saying, hey, we've got a golden eagle. We heard you're looking for a bald eagle. We've got this golden eagle, and we'd love to send him to you. And at the time, I didn't know anything about golden eagles. I didn't think we had any here in Virginia, and I wanted a bald eagle, and I said, no, thanks. And then quite literally within weeks, we had a golden eagle brought into us at the Wildlife Center that had been caught in a leg hold trap. And I found out that we do indeed have golden eagles in Virginia, even though they're only seasonal. They're not here year round. And so I contacted them again and said, okay, if you've still got this bird, I'll be interested in it. And they said, oh yeah, we've still got him, and we'll be glad to send him to you. We'll pay the shipping. Well, that should have been a clue. And when he arrived at Dulles Airport, I went to pick him up, and all over the cage was written in big letters, no fingers, I bite. No fingers, I bite. Caution, danger, dangerous animal. And I thought, well, that's a good way to keep people from harassing the bird. When I got him home, I found out that wasn't a joke. He was a biter and a fighter, and it took us a while, let's just say, to reach an equilibrium, but we did eventually. And he was my partner in education and outreach for 27 years. And he was a full-flighted bird, so he was not injured, but he was behaviorally injured. He was imprinted on humans. He had been found in the town of Merced, California, quite literally walking down the street. His feathers were all shredded, and he had leather straps on his feet, so he had apparently been illegally taken from his nest as a hatchling and kept by someone who aspired to use him for falconry, we assume. And at that time, that was not legal. And yet he had been raised in captivity and imprinted on people, so he could not go back and be set free. And an imprinted golden eagle is said to be one of the most unpredictable and dangerous of all raptors to work with. But once we finally got it worked out, we did have a wonderful, and a very long career. And he has been seen by many, many people. And again, just to show his picture again, here is Junior's picture on the 20th anniversary of Earth Day. And Junior was quite a guy. So thanks for the question. I always enjoy talking about him. All right, it looks like we're almost out of time. Maybe one more question, and I'll try to give a quick answer.
Yeah, I have one more final question. I think it's a good one to end on. 33 Mama asks, when will the new season of the TV show be available?
Okay, good question indeed. All right, the new season of Untamed, we hope, is going to start the third week in May. You can confirm that on our website, but we hope it's going to be the third week in May. Fortunately, we finished the filming on most of the programs. We still have 2 or 3 episodes left to finish, but we're getting very, very close. And American Public Television has picked up season 1. Our producers repackaged 10 of the 13 episodes, and that is going to be available to PBS stations nationwide. Just last week, I was in touch with the folks at American Public Television to get the list of stations that will be showing it, to get a list of those that are not yet deciding to show it. But we're going to turn all of you loose on them so that you can convince them what a good idea that would be. But I think I'm out of time, and rather than get into anybody else's time space, I will put a cork in it here right now. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for the great questions. I'm sorry if you had questions I didn't get to. I'll try to answer some of those online. But please let us know what you think about this live format, because if this works, if people like it, we'll investigate doing more things and bringing you more live interactive programming in the future. But with that said, Kayla, thank you for producing, and I will thank you all for watching, wish you a happy Earth Day, and invite you to stay tuned for the rest of the activities and events this afternoon. Thanks again.